Hi guys. Okay. Today in the Ground Pounder series, we're going to talk about summer heat. And some of them common sense things that people don't think about that much anymore. Summertime is a time when you have to change your tactics. And in the Ground Pounder, when I was doing hiking, I learned from a lot of the old farmers and woodsmen that I knew of how to travel in the summer. But first, let's set the stage, okay? Core temperature is everything in the summer. Now let's look. Your core temperature is 98.6. We're just going to say 100 degrees, okay? So when it's fall and it's 50 degrees out here, I have no problem shedding body heat, do I? Because my temperature is right at 100 and the atmospheric temperature is 50. Got no problem losing heat, so I can exercise, I can chop, I can do whatever I need to do, and I shed heat easily now, don't I? The closer the temperature gets to body temperature, then you get to problems. So like right now here in Alabama, today the high was 94 with 68% humidity. That's relatively low humidity for my part of the South. So let's talk about what's going to happen whenever it hits with heat index 100. Okay? My body can no longer cool to the environment because now that 100 degree body temperature can't go nowhere. It's got to kind of equalize out. Now when we add in humidity, we'll get to that in a second, but let's just talk pure temperature in a minute. The temperature gets to be 99. Finally it gets to be 100 degrees out here. Well, I can't lose any body heat now, can I? So now if I exert myself, that's kind of like a battery. It just takes forever for me to cool back off because my environment is so hot. And so therefore I'm not losing that heat. Now let's add in humidity. Humidity is where the moisture count in the air is so high. So as I perspire, and why do we sweat? That's the body realizing that the air temperature around me is insufficient to cool me while I'm exerting, doing whatever. And so therefore my body will add a layer of water to the surface. I'll secrete it out of my skin to try to evaporate and therefore cool faster. What happens when the humidity is 80 or 90%? It don't evaporate. So now I've got a temperature with combined moisture and air temperature. You get a heat index of 110, 111. I've seen it 118 with heat index there before. And I'm at 100 degrees. Well, if the air heat index is equivalent to 118, guess what? That's heating me. Just sitting here. Now, I'm like that egg that's 50 degrees and I put it in 100 degree water. What's going to happen to that egg? It's going to slowly warm up to 100 degrees. So if I walk out from my house into, with heat index 110, I'm going to add 10 degrees of temperature to me. Notice on our bodies, once we hit 101, 102, 103, we're having a fever and we start having problems. We cannot function like that. Once we hit 105, 106, you can start dying. Well, that's where you get heat exhaustion, heat stroke out of just sitting here because the air temperature and the humidity are so high that all I can do is just sit. I can't exert myself hardly because there's nowhere for that exertion to go, that extra heat to go. And if I just sit here in this environment, I'm a heat sink. It's actually, I'm cooler than my environment, so it's got to warm me up, and it will warm me up like you were running a fever. So, how does this apply to our hiking and stuff in the summer? I learned this trick from guys that lived in the woods. These were guys who were foresters. These were puckwood guys. These were hunters and stuff, that they had to be in the summer woods for a living, you know. And so here's the thing that they learned. You adapt. You adjust the clock a little bit. So let's take with our standard woodscraft camping what I'm going to do. I've got my pack and I'm all loaded and I have set up for the night and I've got my camp. Okay, we're going to start at night. When I'm going to bed, I'm going to break down my whole camp except whatever shelter I'm using, tarp, poncho, whatever, and my bedding, whatever that is, sleeping bag, whatever, woobie. Everything else gets broke down and put back in that pack. Now, I'm a light sleeper. Not everybody is. But in the morning, out here in the environment, when the first birds start singing about twilight in the morning, it's the red bird down here in the south. And there's a old Indian legend about why the red bird is the first to sing. But the birds will start singing, and that's going to wake me up. When is that going to be? If sunrise is actually at 6 a.m., it's going to be like 5:40, 5:45. Okay? Time to get up right now. That's where you roll out, the bedding gets watered up, stuff in the top of the pack, tarp gets taken, rolled up, put in the thing, put in the top of the pack, pull it, snatch it, put it on, let's go. From 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. is the golden 3 hours. Because guess what? That's the coolest it's going to be today. Right there. That is the cool temp. Now the average person hikes on relatively level ground at somewhere around 2.5, maybe 3 miles per hour. Okay? So I hit it. I'm going to get my miles now because I'm going from point A to point B, my next campsite that I plotted. How far do I want to travel in a day? Usually in my environment on trails and things, it was 10 miles. So I'm going to shove off at 6 a.m. I used to have it was actually a plastic baby bottle, back when it was like we had in my day. And I found a screw top cap that sealed it up tight. I would take that, and that was my breakfast, because I would pull out that bottle and it had Tang, instant orange Tang, you know, orange juice. I would add canteen water to it in the morning, put the lid on it, sit there and shake it up real good as I'm hiking down the trail. And I'd take the cap off and I'd start sipping it. Out of a pocket, usually on one of these junk fatigue shirts or whatever, out came that bag of trail mix. And it was nuts, and it was peanuts, it was nuts, it was M&Ms, it was stuff like that, all kinds of little things. Sometimes there was Chex Mix mixed in or whatever, so I had carbs, I had sweets and everything. And that's my breakfast. I would be making time and eating, and I'm going to push it. I want to push hard. These are the 3 golden hours of the morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. What is the temperature on the summer when you're waking up? Well, it's June 1. The low is going to be 70 degrees here. So I'm starting out at 70. Only got 30 degrees of temperature difference between me and the environment. And every hour it goes up. It'll be in the 80s by 8 o'clock. It'll be in the 90s sometime by 8 o'clock. So I've got to push hard now while it's the coolest, while my body sheds the heat the fastest. I've got to make tracks. And so I'm going to push it. Okay? I'm not going to stop to eat breakfast. That's what this is. I'm going to chug that orange juice, and then I'm going to be eating that. I'm going to get a good couple big handfuls of that in my belly, and that will keep me rolling. Okay? I'm going to push till about 9:30, and you're going to have to gauge that, but definitely before 10 a.m. Why 10 a.m.? 10 a.m. till 3 a.m. 3 p.m. here in Alabama. The sun's near about straight up, and you just don't hardly have any shade. You're in the sun, and that temperature just goes straight up. Humidity, bare sunlight, everything else, you're already around 100. So you're not going to perform well, okay? So I've got to throttle back at about 9 o'clock. So I've pushed hard now, and about 9:30, that's when I'm going to pick my lunch rest, my noon rest. I'm going to find some convenient place over here, and I'm going to sling up my little bitty mesh hammock or whatever. with a nice overhead thick shade if at all possible. I do not want pine tree shade. I want big oaks, broad leaves that actually gives me some UV protection. Remember we talked about that. And then I'll maybe sling up a quick poncho or something if there are little speckles of light coming in, it's going to bug me. Do that. I want wind, I want water. So I'm going to try to pick my place. You see what I'm saying? How many miles have I traveled? Well, if I average 2.5 miles, you know, I'm somewhere between 7.5 and 9 miles right now. How far was I going today? 10. I've already got 3/4 of my miles down. And I'm going to stop, and I'm going to take my siesta. Now I got to cool. I'm going to vent. I'm going to take all my pack off, get it off that. I'm going to get myself up in the air column. I want a breeze if at all possible. So I'm looking for a site where I got elevation near water where that natural convection is going to get me a little bit of air movement. I want running water, so I got plenty of sources. I need to refill my canteens. I need to get hydrated, etc. Now, after I've cooled down for an hour or so, I don't want to eat when I first get here because I'm too hot. I'm going to cool down, and then somewhere around 12, 1, somewhere in there, whatever I feel convenient. That's when I'm going to eat my actual lunch, okay? I am not cooking anything. Notice breakfast was not cooking. What are we doing here, guys? Core temperature. I got buddy mines that we would go and they had to just keep stopping. I got to have some coffee. We got to stop. Give me fire up a mug of coffee right now. Your addiction to coffee is going to get you killed. Because what is your core temperature right now? Well, it's right at 100 degrees and it's about 80% humidity, and all we're doing is sitting here and sweating. I can't shed. So now I'm going to bring 175, 180 degree coffee and drink it. And that's about what most hot coffee is around 170, 180 degrees. And I'm going to raise my core temperature even more. Now I'm just going to sweat even more profusely. And it ain't going to cool you off because the environment's so hot and the humidity's so high. So why would I want to drink hot coffee? I want cool things. I want to hydrate, so I'm drinking. That's one of the reasons I want running water. Remember, I towed a grail these days. So that means I can dip up cool water out of a stream, filter it immediately, and it's still cool. Now when I drink that water, and let's say it's 70 degrees, well, that's 20 degrees cooler than my core temperature, right? I'm bringing my core temperature down. What is going to be lunch? That's going to be one of them little packages of Spam or a tuna set, something like that, you know, something that I can eat. But I want to be as cool as possible when I eat so I don't get nauseous, okay? Now, about 3 or 4 in the afternoon, notice I said 3 or 4. That's when I'm going to do my last leg, and that's when I'm going to shove off, and I'm going to get to my final campsite for the night. I'm going to pull in there. I only got 1.5 miles or 2 to go, right? To have my 10 miles because I've plotted my stopping points. I'm going to come into camp, immediately dump it, swing up the hammock, and cool off a little bit because I'm going to need to, right? Then I'm going to get everything established for it. At sundown, just at twilight sundown, that's when I'm going to bring out my wet wipes and etc. If I can get a stream and a wash, I'm going to do it. I'm going to wash all the salt off of me that I've generated during the day. Make sure I'm not going to chafe, armpits, down in the crotch, etc. Wash. Cool. If this is, as we call it, erky, hang it up, let it be air drying. That's when my dry clothes would come out. Okay? Right after sundown, which is going to be between 8:30 and 9 p.m. Central Time in Alabama in the summer. That's when I'm going to eat my meal. And that's when I'm going to bring out my stove and I'm actually going to cook something. I'm going to have a hot meal then. I'm not going anywhere. It's humid at all get out, but the temperature is slowly coming down. My campsite, again, I want somewhere with an elevation change near water so I get a little bit of convective air movement. Try to get me some air. Otherwise, these thick pine forests, it's just not a breath of air is moving. So I need some sort of natural topography that's going to help me. And that only comes with experience. of figuring out where to get. Like right now, in this thick forest that I'm in right now, I can feel, oh, the slightest, I mean just the slightest little breeze on this side of my face. But it's probably like a half mile an hour, but it is moving air. I will then set up my hammock or whatever it is I'm setting up. Everything that I'm not going to be needing anymore gets repacked, remember? Me, my companions or whatever, going to sit around the fire, if we have a fire, or the candle lantern, or whatever, and enjoy it. And when it's bedtime, right before bedtime, I will make sure I am well hydrated. I will pack up everything, and now it's time to go to bed. So, I made my 10 miles. I have stayed very hydrated. I have not exerted myself during the hottest part of the day. I've used those 3 golden hours to make my time and make my distance. I allowed the straight up sun. I had found a resting spot and I chilled out. I took a siesta. So it was get up, push hard, spend 4 or 5 hours in a site just chilling out. Work on projects if you want to. If you want to practice on your whittling or your whatever, there you go. As long as it's not something that's going to exert you too much in the heat. Okay? Then 3, 4 in the afternoon. Depends on what time of year, but obviously the game is I want the sun back over far enough I got shade again from the trees. It's not coming straight down. Now as I walk out there, it's not just beating straight down on me. It's at an angle, and I can work along the edge of a tree line and stay in shade. Shade is your friend. We want to keep our core temperature down. Remember? At every opportunity that I get to where I've got cool water, I'm going to take that grill, fill it up. If you got a life straw or something like you prefer, that's great. But obviously the game is here, if I have to boil water for purification, I will. But it takes forever for it to cool down for me to drink it. See, I've got to take water and boil it and bring it up to 212 degrees. And the mean ambient temperature out here right now is 110. How long is it going to take that to cool down? And the coolest it'll get is the mean ambient temperatures. Well, if that's over 100 degrees, I'm not cooling my body when I drink it, am I? I am hydrating, but I'm not cooling, and my core temperature ain't going to be affected. So if I find a cool stream, and since I've got that grail, or you've got that life straw, or some other thing, take the opportunity to get you a thing and drink cool water to drop your core. At every opportunity, drop your core. Don't be afraid to sop a rag, or like those mesh I've talked about, those mesh neck things, scarves, or take your baklava, you know what I'm talking about, shamag, I'm sorry, and get it wet and drape it over your head as you're walking, because as I'm walking, I'm moving air artificially. When I stop, I'm not. So then I've got to have the environment moving. So, in this episode, this little take on ground pounder, we're beginning the summer heat. And so I wanted to address, let's just talk about the gorilla in the room, heat itself, and the most important thing you're doing, maintaining your core temperature. Many people, and you know yourself, it's cool and they just want to lay there and sleep in the morning. So they get up about 8:30 or 9. Then they want a big old pot of coffee because they're used to back home chug-a-lugging coffee every morning. And they're sitting there and they're drinking. They bring their core temperature up. And about the time they put the pack on and they're ready to shove off, it's already in the 90s. The humidity is already in the 80s. And they start wilting. You know, they get out there, they can't hardly go nowhere. Sweat's just pouring out of them. And they're trying to walk during the midday heat. You're just setting yourself up to fail. Now, as a side note right here, clothing. I wear cotton in the summertime. I know a lot of people don't like cotton. Cotton is a bad thing in the winter, but it's absolutely what you want in the summer heat because it gets wet and it stays wet. Well, then it's like a wet towel on me. Now, you're going to hear this term a lot of wicking material. And I saw something a couple of years ago that was a real eye-opener to me. And what it was is that it was one of the parts of the Olympic Committee, basically. And as you know, you go look at anything for speed, okay? Downhill ski jumpers. were these nylon super slick suits. Bicycle racers in the Olympics wear really slick suits. Divers in pool competitions wear a cap. It's all designed to reduce friction going through the air or going through the water. And so with the invention of what they're calling wicking material for these clothing, and you'll hear this mentioned a lot in outdoor clothing, it's very wicking material. It pulls moisture away from you so you're not in your sweat. The committee wanted to know if that gave them an advantage, because when it comes down to, these are Olympic class athletes and win or lose is often in tenths of seconds, then because I'm wearing some sort of material that keeps me cooler, would it give me an advantage? And so they wanted to test it. And so they took Olympic class athletes and they put them in these controlled lab settings where they could adjust the temperature and the humidity. And they put them on treadmills running, and they put them into these wicking material shirts and running suits and everything else. And what they found is it does work at getting moisture off of you faster, but they performed less in the overall because they dehydrated faster because of it. When you get out in this environment, you get hot, you get sopped and everything else, and these clothes just get absolutely sopping wet. If you just constantly wipe that moisture off, the body's going to put it back. The body feels, I have to have that layer of sweat over me to cool. You're wiping it off doesn't mean anything to the body. It's going to put it back. And so if I wick it away from the body, I dehydrate faster because my body's going to pull that water one way or the other. And so it was found it actually hurt the performance of these athletes in distance run and things like that. Something you wouldn't see in a 90-second sprint or something like that. But when you were talking about like marathon running or something like that, it absolutely did hurt them because they were dehydrating so fast because of it. So I learned from a lot of these guys years ago to wear cotton material. I wear my old hat, but my hat will get absolutely, as you can see, all over it, absolutely sopping wet with sweat. But it actually acts like a wet towel then, and it cools me. As I move and air moves, if it can evaporate, it will evaporate. If it cannot evaporate, it's still holding the moisture against my body, and my body doesn't steal water from me trying to replace it. It feels like, oh, the water's still there. So I do not dehydrate as fast. Okay? So, in conclusion, you're going to have to change up when you're dealing in this kind of heat and this kind of environment. Either going to have to do short little hikes, you're going to have to eliminate hikes and just go here, park, and walk a half mile in and camp, because of the heat and the humidity is going to rob you of your strength, and it's going to risk you getting heat stroke and heat exhaustion if you try to exert. You've got to understand your environment. If you are doing something where you have to hike, you've got to rotate around and use my pattern. Up it before 6 if at all possible, and push it and get as many miles as you can in that magic 3 hours from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Because after that, temperature's up, humidity's up. It looks like fog. There's so much steam down here in the morning is everything, the steamy jungle as we're trying to walk in it. And so you have to get your miles in then. After that, you're going to have to rest for a couple hours during that height of that sun being up over you. A place where you can hydrate, a place where you can cool. You ain't got to stop and do nothing. You can sit there and work on your skills. Good time to do it. Nature observation, whatever. And then in the afternoon, push on through to your campsite. Get set up, follow my pattern, eat your big cooking meal that fills you up that night, between somewhere about an hour or so before you're going to go to bed. And then pack up everything for that quick start in the morning. That's the best method I have found, with all of my experience and all this heat, to be able to do any kind of traveling on foot in this kind of environment, in that kind of summer heat. Hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you did, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button before you go. And there'll be more ground pounder videos coming up. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.